I want to start off with three problems or three little stories. Parents picking up their kids late from a daycare. There's a sudden increase in the poisonous snakes in the city. Teachers changing their students' exam answers just to hit a target. All these problems have one thing in common. Someone tried to solve them and it backfired. What connects them is one simple idea: incentives. Incentives are the forces that make certain choices feel easier, safer, more rewarding than others. This can include reputation, money, guilt. They quietly control the choices you make. At the end of my talk, I'm not asking you to remember every single story. All I'm asking is for you to keep this idea at the back of your head and just try to observe where incentives quietly control the choices you make. It can be at work, at home, and always in the world around you. For my first story, it takes place in an Israeli daycare. Their teachers over there had a problem all of you might relate to. Parents kept coming late to pick up their children. Officially, the pickup time was 4 p.m., but parents would stroll in at 4:10, 4:15, even 4:30. A pair of economists looked at this problem and said, well, this is easy. We'll just impose a fine. If a parent comes more than 10 minutes late, they'll have to pay a fee. Sounds simple, right? Make lateness more expensive, people will stop being late. Let's see what happened, shall we? The economists first just observed for a few weeks, and they measured how many people came late. And then they introduced the fine. What do all of you think happened after the fine was set? Well, the lateness did not go down. In fact, it went up. It almost doubled. Parents who had occasionally thought they rushed to avoid being late, now thought, well, it's just a small fine. I'll just pay it. The most interesting part, even after the daycare removed the fine, the lateness stayed high. It did not go back down. The old mindset did not fully come back. What happened here? Well, before the fine, the incentive was moral and social. I don't want to be that parent who doesn't care about the child. But after the fine, the lateness became a service you could buy. The fine replaced a powerful social incentive with a very weak economic incentive. It made parents realize that lateness isn't a big deal. It's just a little bit expensive. My second story goes like this. In colonial India, the officials were dealing with an increase of venomous cobras in their city. A very reasonable problem, right? So they designed a neat solution. They said, we will pay a bounty for every single dead cobra you bring us. It sounds great at first, and it also worked. People brought in loads of dead snakes, and the government paid out the rewards. The numbers looked great. But as the popular saying goes, whatever is worth money is worth cheating for. If a dead cobra is worth money, then a live cobra is like a future investment. So people began to breed cobras and kill them just for the profit. Eventually the government did hear about this and they cancelled the program. So now all those dead cobras are worthless, so they were set free. What resulted was more cobras in the streets than before the program started. What happened here? Well, the officials thought they were paying for fewer cobras, but the thought they planted into people's minds was, bring us dead snakes. They paid for outputs, not the true goal, and people made the most out of the deal. Natural. For my third and final story, let's move on to schools. Imagine you're a teacher. You work hard, you care about your students. Now the system introduces high stakes testing. Now your job security, your reputation, maybe even your bonuses are now dependent on your students' test scores. In many places, this is what happened. One exam, once a year, was the main measure of success. In Chicago, researchers found something very interesting. Some students' test answers were the exact same string of answers, especially on the harder questions. And those same students' test scores jumped drastically for 1 year and then fell back down the next year when they moved on to a new teacher. Well, what was going on? Well, the researchers retested some of these suspected classrooms, this time with official observers. What they found out was also very interesting. What they found out was also interesting. The scores dropped by almost a full grade level in those exact same suspected classrooms. What was going on? Well, some teachers, under intense pressure, had been changing the students' answers after the students left. Now, I agree, it's uncomfortable to hear this because we look up to our teachers like our heroes. But this isn't a lesson about bad teachers. The lesson here is that some people will protect the metric rather than the mission. Now, before all of you head back home, I want all of you to do one very simple thing. I want you to just observe. At work, when you're tempted or stressed to cut a corner. At home, when someone's behavior annoys you. Or as a customer, when you see a fine, a fee, or a default setting. Incentives aren't just tools for businessmen to make money. They are the invisible architecture to your everyday life. Once you start to see them, you don't just understand how cobras, daycare centers, and teachers work. Once you realize this, you can now decide how you want to raise your kids, manage your team, design your goals, but with your incentives at play. Now, also one last thing before I end, I want to give credit where it's due. Some of the ideas I framed, the teacher story, the daycare story, and some of my own ideas are inspired from a book called Freakonomics by economists Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner. I highly recommend you read it, not just because it's a famous bestseller, but because it accomplishes something many books don't. It makes you comfortable changing your mind. You see your own assumptions proved wrong, and the book encourages you to think beyond instinct and tradition. Thank you so much for listening to me, ladies and gentlemen. I hope some of what I said is useful to you. Thank you.